Hi everyone. Over the last several months, particularly since taking on new responsibilities at work, I started to have big concerns that my mind was broken. It was constantly full. It was buzzing, I would say, at a frequency that was unusual to me, and my thoughts were completely scattered and fragmented in the most irritating way. And I think what was most worrying to me was that I was suddenly finding myself unable to recall specific information that I should have been able to recall from meetings that had happened 24 hours previously. And people were asking me questions, and I was like having like a blank slate moment, and it was deeply, deeply concerning to me. And I had to ask myself the question, is this what it feels like to have early onset dementia, or is this old age, or what is happening? I think, and the most frustrating thing for me was that I felt like I was doing everything right. I had my to-do lists, I had my AI transcriptions of meetings, I had my responsibilities broken down into themes and folders in OneNote, and on paper my systems were solid, and yet my ability to properly process or even encode the information had clearly been eroded. I couldn't try any harder, and it really worried me, and it felt like my memory was going, and I knew that I had to do something. But over the last couple of weeks, I think I've stumbled onto an explanation that has been useful for me. And it wasn't that I wasn't putting in enough effort or my systems weren't very good. I think the real culprit in all this has been attention. My ability to pay attention. And as I reflected on it, I think I've realized that I wasn't giving my mind the chance to actually lay down the information that it was receiving. The information never made it into my long-term memory. It just passed straight through, almost in one ear and out the other. And for a long number of years, I've maybe always thought that I've had ADHD. I read a book on it once, and what it said seemed to chime. And it may or may not be true. I'm unlikely to ever get tested. But I think that's only part of the issue, and whether I like it or not, I have to find a way to function in this corporate world in which I find myself, and I still have responsibilities to my family and to my colleagues and to my employer. And this has forced me to look very, very carefully at how I was living and how my attention was being displaced and fragmented. So I've started to think of attention a bit like a bucket of water. It's finite. You wake up with this certain amount, and some days it'll be better than others, and it all depends on what you're going through, whether you're stressed, whether you've had a good amount of sleep, what's happening in your professional or your private life. Now, the interesting thing I think is that you don't get to refill this bucket halfway through the day, or at least that's how I'm considering it. And I've got to be very, very careful about how I use it, because once it's gone, it's gone. And I think most of us we find activities throughout the day and we pour bits here and bits there of the water out, and before we know it, our attention span is completely used up. I almost also think about it like a soldier who goes out into a hostile territory from his forward operating base. He's got a certain amount of ammunition with him. He has to be judicious in the use of it whenever he comes under contact, not knowing when he's going to get a resupply again. But in our day-to-day life, many of us will be facing the same challenges: emails, messages, meetings, and we bounce from one task to another like demented frogs. And we're never fully tuned in to what we're doing. Perhaps, if you're like me, I could be, 24 hours in the past, all the way up to a month and a half in the future, always working, always thinking about all the things that need to be done. And then we've got the bleeps and the pings and the notifications that are coming in. I personally find these very addictive. They make me feel responsive, they make me feel useful, they make me feel productive. And I think the reason for that is that there's a trigger action reward loop going on, possibly something to do with dopamine, and it makes us feel like we're making progress in the moment, but actually it's very corrosive to trying to do anything meaningful or important, if we think about it from a longer range point of view. And then, of course, there is the elephant in the room. This wretched thing here, the phone. Constantly, I'd be checking the newsfeed, checking Bitcoin prices, checking X over and over and over again in a loop. And when I honestly look at my behavior, this phone comes out when the friction starts, when something feels hard, whenever I hit resistance, The phone offers instant relief. It numbs the discomfort, and also I think we'll find as well, whenever there's maybe for a moment where there is a pause, there's nothing to do, we fill that pause or that space by checking our phone. And here's what I've realized: most of the time, the distraction that we engage in is not about finding pleasure, it's about numbing. It's a way of avoiding contact with the natural entropy and difficulty of life, I think, because if the noise stops, if the scrolling ends, there's something waiting underneath. There's a decision, there's responsibility, there's a quiet sense that maybe work needs done. That can be inward work or outward work. And the distraction that we engage in keeps us busy enough to not feel all those pressures and tensions and things that are inside us that are calling us to maybe something greater. So here's the thing: I reckon that our openness to distraction is doing real damage to our ability to function well in the world and with people, to give of our best, to perform our duties faithfully, and to live out our lives correctly. So in my case, my work has become more complex. I hadn't changed how I lived or how I operated. I was doing the work okay, but I wasn't giving my brain a solid, uninterrupted block of time to collect, to process, to make sense of what was actually being done. It was almost like the loop was not closed. I needed to open the loop, I needed to deal with what was in the loop, and then I needed to close it. And I know that my natural way of thinking is layered, it's nuanced, I'm hungry for ideas. And what is good, or what I'm good at, was being weaponized against me by allowing in all the disruption and all the was being weaponized against me by all the disruption and all the superfluous inputs that I'm allowing to creep in. And it was preventing me really allowing my brain to function as it should, to slowly do the work, almost like a tank track, just slowly laying down, just rumbling forward and collecting and processing the information. So as my responsibilities have increased, I've had to face a very uncomfortable truth that my attention is absolutely finite, but the demands on it are not. So I have to accept that there's always going to be more emails, always going to be more meetings, always going to be more noise, more urgency, more rage bait in the news that is demanding my attention. And if I don't proactively protect it, it's going to be spent for me. And there is a whole industry out there that wants my attention, primarily if they have it. They can sell me something, or at least they think they can, and maybe they can. But it's the most precious commodity that I think we have right now. And then if we don't protect our attention, what happens? We then come home after work, especially, as I said, it's a finite resource, it's a bucket that's filled. There's nothing left for our wife, for our family, for our faith, for the activities and the other things that we actually care about, shall we say, in the real world. So it's maybe I was looking at it from an incorrect category. I thought this was a productivity problem. It's not. It's an attentional territory problem. And reclaiming attention doesn't start with hacks or optimization, as tempting as that is for me with someone with my personality who thinks there's a shortcut. It starts with a harder question. What am I giving my attention to inattentively? What am I avoiding by staying distracted? Because when you remove the noise, something always shows up, something like boredom, something like anxiety. Sometimes it's calling within you that you're ignoring. And that's us right at the edge of the territory, and we need to engage with that. For me, taking territory right now in this area, it doesn't look too dramatic. It just means bringing in fewer inputs, not about adding more, but taking more away. Longer silences. For example, in the car on the way to work, and don't listen to podcasts anymore, I sit in silence. I just allow the brain subconsciously to work on whatever it wants to work on and don't take anything more in. I'm protecting my mornings as far as I can, that sort of golden hours between maybe 9 and 11, or whatever your hours will be, you need to protect them as well, but that's what works well for me. And just trying to keep it that I can focus and pay attention specifically on the goals and the things that need the actual work. And crucially, creating distance between me and this wretched phone here. At the moment, I'm leaving it in the car. It's quite a wrench to do that. One feels that, oh my goodness, I can't be contacted. But if someone really needs to get me, they know the number of my business, they'll be able to reach me. And I've gone back as well, interestingly, to a pocket notebook. And how I use that is if I have some information, or sorry, if I have a task that needs done, I will write out a start time. I write out what the task is. I then turn off all the distractions that can bother me, being notifications on the computer or whatever. I get engaged in the task, and then when I'm complete, I write in the completion time and I draw a line underneath it. It's maybe just a bit of a psychological hack just to kind of give a bit of a start, a middle and an end, and that line underneath says, right, that is dealt with, that is closed. Now, I've got to say, I'm not fixed by any stretch of the imagination. I think this is going to be a project of many years, over the years of damage that I've received by staying engaged with my phone, but I do think it is something that has improved and allowing me to function better in the day job. Now, as a final thought, it can't just be me who's experiencing this. Surely, what if our doctors, our engineers, and our pilots are also struggling with the same challenge? Is this not a big problem? If we're living in a society that can't manage its attention, and we're treating it like it's infinite when it clearly isn't, I think we're in for trouble. And it's not just a case of becoming less productive. You know, I think we're going to lose judgment. I think we're going to lose presence. We're going to lose care. And whenever all these are lost and things go wrong, we ultimately then start losing trust. And the one thing our society right now cannot afford to lose is trust. If you think we're broken now, it's only going to get worse. And I think that we, as responsible men, have to dig in and work out how we reclaim and restore our attention and our ability to focus on what is important. Now, I struggle with this, particularly the boring and the necessary things, but I'm putting in the guardrails, and I have been for a number of weeks now. And what I am interested in is tell me in the comments below if you're experiencing similar things. And also as well, please subscribe if you found this little essay of mine thoughtful and thought-provoking. Thank you.